I developed Metabolic Aftershock because I saw a need in the exercise world for something that created an individualized metabolic response for people. So what I mean by that is when you look out in the exercise world, what's happening is that a lot of people have picked up on interval style training, and that has tremendous benefit for the metabolism. The only problem with it is it's too intense for some and not as intense for others. And there's no exercise program that really addresses our unique differences in our fitness and our level of fitness. And so in this particular program, what we've done is we actually created a technology that allows us to adapt to each individual and their level of fitness. The rest-based training concept allows you to get the exact right response for your metabolism so that you can create that aftershock. Many of these other programs are simply just taking interval style trainings, one size fits all protocols, and trying to apply them across the board to everyone, and it simply does not work. Those are two types of programs, right? The one type goes just based on duration. You exercise for a long period of time and you burn calories, and they don't take into consideration the hormonal aspects of exercise. So that's the first part. Those programs really are all about calories, not about hormones. So this program is really about hormones. And there are some other programs like that, some of the other ones you've talked about, but then they only take it to the effect of interval style training, which does address the hormonal effects, but doesn't do it in an individualized way. And so what we've sort of done is take both the calorie model, married it with the hormonal model, and then took this other component that no other programs have and put the individualized concept on top of that. And that creates this effect that we can really get the correct intensity for each individual to maximize the benefit. Well, the first thing you see when you work in the clinical setting is that you come face to face with the individual nature of people's metabolisms. You find out really quickly that these off-the-shelf, one-size-fits-all protocols work for some people, but they don't work for most. And I would say 20%, maybe 30% get great results from sort of these off-the-shelf programs that don't individualize. But then most of the other people don't, either because it's too tough, they get injured, it's not adapted to their metabolism. That creates problems. So when you're in a clinical setting, you have to find solutions that match most people. And so when you take an individualized approach, like rest-based training, you can now turn that 20 to 30% who respond into 50 to 70% who respond. And that's a beautiful thing in the clinical practice, but you have to think about it from that point of view when you're working with people you're supposed to get results from. This is more of an intelligent workout because what happens is when most people think about exercise, they really look at our metabolism as just basically a calculator, right? Calories in and calories out. And that's not really how the metabolism works. Some people even say the metabolism is more like a chemistry lab, right? It actually doesn't work like that either. The metabolism is more like a thermostat or a seesaw. It's an adaptive, reactive system that really responds to stress and food, right? And so sort of a shotgun approach to exercise says, well, it's just about calories and we'll just do more and more and more, and ignores the fact that if you stress your body out too much, the metabolism is going to slow itself. And guess what else it's going to do? It's going to make you more hungry. It's going to make you have cravings. It's going to make you crave more of the wrong foods more often, and it's going to slow down your metabolic rate. Now, who wants to go do exercise that slows your metabolic rate, makes you more hungry, and makes you crave sugary, salty, fatty foods? Intelligent exercise pays attention to how the workout is going to impact hunger and cravings, whether the workout is going to make you lose muscle or keep your muscle or gain muscle. We need to get a little bit more intelligent about exercise because exercise is not just about burning calories. It's not even just about releasing hormones. It's also about how does this interact with your lifestyle? Does it help you sleep better? Does it help you make better food choices? Are you more or less likely to go binge on pizza because of the workout you did? When you do short, high-intensity exercise that's adapted to the individual, then what happens is you can take control and lower hunger, you can decrease cravings, and you can stop some of the negative compensatory reactions that the metabolism has when you're dieting. That's what we hope to do with a workout like this. So there's several key studies that show, that research shows back this style of training. One of the things I'll bring up, by the way, and I think it was in American Psychologist in 2007, I forget the issue of that particular journal, but what it showed conclusively is what most people don't know, that 95% of people that go on, eat less, exercise more, program, sort of the non-intelligent approach, 95% will regain the weight. 66% actually end up fatter in the long run. So this idea is that exercise less or exercise more and eat less has been proven by research not to work. That's the big one that is really important. And so what we want to do is we want to get more intelligent with exercise. We want to basically say, you know what, let's match intake and output. Either eat less and exercise less, or eat more and exercise more. But let's move away from this eat less, exercise more model. That was a profound sort of study showing that these diets and these exercise programs that just think about calories fail constantly. One study that was actually profound, and this was done back in 2002, and it's quoted quite a bit. It showed that a workout that had heavy weight training with short rest periods, similar to this workout, was able to elevate post-exercise calorie burn, specifically fat calories, for 48 hours after the workout. What was beautiful about this particular study is they stopped measuring at 48 hours. So we don't actually know how long this goes. There are some studies that hint it might go up to 72 hours or even longer. But the point is, research has shown for some time that short, intense workouts that get the B's and the H's can stimulate metabolism over the long run. One final study that was critical was that this idea of rest-based training really came out of psychology research. And what they showed is these guys doing high-intensity activity on bicycles. They compared traditional interval training, right, where these people would do 2 minutes of work followed by a period of rest. And they measured how long based on heart rate recovery, based on respirations, based on lactate return, and all these things that they measure in labs. They said, how long does the average person take to rest and recover so they can exert the same effort again? And they found that was about 2 minutes. Then they took those same group of people and said, hey, what we want you to do is exercise to your high intensity and then take as long as is required for you until you feel like going again. And what they discovered is that these people ended up resting without any sort of prodding from the research team at all about 2 minutes. And so what they actually found in this study is that humans are actually very good at looking at their internal sensations and deciding when it's time to push again. And so those things are all sort of really great indications that really we want to individualize exercise. We want to have exercise programs that are short and intense rather than just focused on calories. And we also want to understand that this eat less, exercise more model is actually not working in the long run. And if we take just a calorie burning approach with exercise, we may be making people hungrier. We may be making people have more cravings. They might be more likely to overeat to make up for the exercise session. That's not what we want. We want our exercise to be effective and efficient. I like to say your exercise sessions should be efficient exercise. You do just enough to get the result and no more. There's a lot of truth to the idea, and there's a lot of research out there that shows that traditional forms of exercise can actually end up damaging the metabolism. Now, we don't want to go to extremes here, right? Because people hear that and they're like, what, you're telling me I shouldn't jog and I shouldn't do marathon running and those kinds of things. Some people can do just fine with those things, but many people are not doing well with them. And you might ask, well, why, Jade? I don't understand. Why is that the case? The reason that's the case is because when you put out all that energy, all those calories, and you're not eating to fuel your body, in other words, you're using the eat less, exercise more model, what you're doing is you're breaking down body tissue. Now, you think you're just burning fat, right? But what happens with these types of exercises, they create a hormonal soup as well. But it's a negative hormonal soup, and it can actually cause you to lose muscle along with fat. It can cause you to lose bone along with fat. And before you know it, you have lost some weight. Maybe you've gotten smaller, but you end up being a flabbier, skinnier, less healthy version of your former self. And that is why these types of exercise programs really don't work for people in the long run. They may actually be causing issues. Not only that, all this long-term exercise ramps up hunger and cravings. And then these people stop exercise or they get injured, and then they blow up like water balloons because all of a sudden their metabolism is primed to store all that fat back and not have any muscle because it lost it along the way. And so again, it's about being smart, intelligent, doing efficient exercise that really burns fat primarily, maintains muscle and bone integrity, and allows you to recover and adapt rather than just tears your body down. What we do is everybody has a unique ability to measure their body's response to exercise. Research has shown this. We have the ability to say when we're working too hard. For example, when we get breathless and we can no longer talk, we're naturally going to want to slow the pace of our exercise or even stop and rest. When we feel burning in our muscles, when that gets too extreme, we're naturally going to want to slow our exercise pace or stop and rest. The same goes when we have really heavy weights, right? When you're straining against a heavy weight, we're going to have a natural response to know when we get too heavy. So we have these biofeedback clues that tell us it's time to stop, take a rest, and recover. And so rest-based training basically just taps into that own, sort of thing that we have, that we know ourselves, that we can basically tap in and say, intuitively, I know I've kind of had enough. I need to rest if I want to keep this pace up. That's what rest-based training does. Whereas other programs just say, hey, go, 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 go. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, no matter what is going on in your physiology. And what that causes us to do is it causes us to take a rest. I'll give you an example, actually. One of the things, if you remember back when we were little kids and our parents told us, don't put your hand on the hot stove, right? And so we avoid pain in exercise and we avoid pain in daily life. Doing interval training and telling someone to go, 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 go is sort of like grabbing their hand and forcing it on that hot stove. We're naturally not going to want to do that. However, if we have control, if we can put our hand on that stove and pull it off whenever we want, put it on, pull it off, pull it on, pull it off on our own level, our own intensity, our own autonomy rather, then we can do it without actually getting burned. And that makes us trust the process more. That's what we're doing with rest-based training. What I was doing 5 years ago is a lot of what you're seeing today. Just interval style stuff, balls to the wall type of training that go all out and don't really give people rest. What I've adapted to now is this idea that when I give people rest and let them have control of that, they will actually work harder. And the other thing that I'm doing now is using a lot of these techniques that release myokines from the muscle. We didn't know this 5 years ago, but we now know that muscle isn't just about moving and burning calories, but when you move it in a particular way, you actually release signaling molecules that literally leave the muscle, go talk to the brain, go talk to your fat cells, go talk to other muscle cells, and stimulate fat burning and control hunger, and also turn on some of the mechanisms that shape muscle. And so muscle is an endocrine organ. And we didn't know that 5 years ago. And so now I'm using a lot of things that you'll see in metabolic aftershock, like pulses and holds and things that cause vascular occlusion to get more of these muscle molecules into the system so you can have this beneficial effect. So the way vascular occlusion works, a lot of people don't know this, but there's a big difference between arteries and veins. So when the blood leaves the heart, right, it moves around the body because of the pressure of the beating heart and because the arteries have smooth muscles in them that will move the blood along. But once that blood gets into the tissues and passes through the capillaries and then gets into the veins on its way back to the heart, it no longer has the pressure from the heart muscle, and the veins don't have those same muscles in their walls either. So they rely on two things. One, the squeezing and contraction of skeletal muscle, and valves that are in the veins that keep the blood from flowing backwards. So if I do this with my bicep, what I'm doing is I'm clamping down on those blood vessels and making that blood stay put. And when I do that, all those metabolic byproducts that are going on from the working muscle, right, end up accumulating locally, and then they can interact and signal more locally to that muscle. And then that creates sort of this adaptation signal. So the body can then respond. And what we now know is by doing this vascular occlusion technique, you can use much lighter weights and get the same sort of muscle shaping effects than you would with heavier weights or more intense activity. So it's safer and it's more effective. One of the beautiful things about this workout is that it helps you build your fat burning potential over the long run. And here's how it does it. In each of your cells, you have little things called mitochondria. These things are your energy factories in your cells. And the more of those you have, the more that you can burn fat at rest. And what happens is when you do high intensity activity that releases things like lactic acid, which this workout does, and nitric oxide, which this workout does, those two things signal the body to make more mitochondria. And that happens slowly over time. But after 3 weeks or so of this, just a few weeks, you're going to have more mitochondria and your fat burning potential is going to go up while you rest, right? That's the beautiful thing. So you've actually enhanced, gave yourself a hardware upgrade to your fat burning machinery. We talk a lot about the B's and H's in this workout. I mean, they're critical. A lot of people talk about the hormonal effects of exercise, right? But that's kind of this amorphous term. What exactly is going on? How do you measure what hormones are being produced? Well, you really can't unless you got someone hooked up to some, machine in a lab. But you do have biofeedback clues as to what's going on. And that's what the B's and H's are. They're basically your clues that you're getting the right hormonal response. So what do they stand for? Breathless, burning, heavy, and heat. So let's go through each one of those. When you get breathless, right, your body registers that disturbance. What does it do? Well, it wants more oxygen, and so it's going to release the hormones that will open up the airways, right? And those are the catecholamines, adrenaline and noradrenaline, right? And here's the thing about those. They do open up the airways so you can get more oxygen, but they're also potent fat-burning hormones, and they trigger the beginnings of this metabolic cascade or this metabolic ripple that leads to the aftershock. So being breathless is critical because it releases this catecholamines. If you can't talk in a workout, you know you're getting this effect. It's a great way to look at it. Burning is another way to sort of understand that you're getting a human growth hormone response. That is correlated with lactate release, lactic acid. A lot of you guys probably have heard of lactic acid, but that's also correlated with human growth hormone. So when you're getting this burn, you know that you're getting a big lactic acid push, and human growth hormone is being released as well. What does that do? Well, that human growth hormone is the hormone of our youth. It helps burn fat. It helps tighten and tone muscle. It helps actually strengthen connective tissue and make our bodies look tighter. So again, breathless, you get these catecholamines. Burning, you get this human growth hormone. Heavy is really interesting because when you're straining, when you're doing something like a push-up and you feel your body strain under that weight, that's an indication you're getting some testosterone release, right? And so now we've got catecholamines combined with human growth hormone, combined with testosterone, and this whole hormonal soup starts to appear, and these things work synergistically to help us burn fat and shape muscle. The last one, heat, is all about getting hot and sweaty, and that's an indication you're burning a significant amount of calories. And so rather than thinking about all the names of these hormones and getting all fancy, if you just think, am I getting the B's and the H's in my workouts, then you know you're getting the hormonal response that's going to create this aftershock. One of the questions that come up is this program equally effective for men and women? It absolutely is, because what this program does is create a very distinct metabolic response that we humans, both men and women, are adapted to. And it really is sort of this metabolic trigger, what we call the fight or flight response. Whenever you're confronted with stress, many of you guys have probably heard of the fight or flight response in your chemistry classes. Our body releases adrenaline and noradrenaline, these catecholamines, to make us run or be able to fight. And in response to that, the body is expecting that you do high intensity activity, that you either are running for your life or fighting like hell, and you get this adaptation response from the body. And when you do that, this surge of catecholamines combined with this high intensity activity, what follows from that is this metabolic ripple effect that releases lactic acid, nitric oxide, human growth hormone, testosterone, and this whole hormonal soup that allows you to recover, repair, and adapt to get leaner, faster, tighter, stronger. That's what this does, and this has been with us for eons. It's part of how the human metabolism works. So we don't want to be circumventing that. When we are confronted with stress, we want an intense, short stimulus that the body is used to working with. That's how the body's designed to work. And when we give that stress plus stimulus, we get a tighter, leaner body in response. Let me tell you how this workout really helps with stubborn fat. One of the things about stubborn fat is there's different types of receptors that are around fat cells. There's the beta receptors, which burn fat, and there's the alpha receptors that are anti-burn. So remember, B for beta, burn fat, and remember A for alpha, anti-burn of fat. Well, stubborn fat tends to have more alpha receptors than beta receptors. That's why it's stubborn. It doesn't burn as well. So this style of training, what it does is it ramps up sugar use during the workout. Remember we talked about that? But then what it does is it enhances fat burning after. And it may have an effect where it down-regulates the alpha receptors and up-regulates these beta receptors, allowing us to tap into our stubborn fat a little bit. And it may have something to do with this fatty acid recycling. And I haven't used that term yet, but fatty acid recycling essentially means when you do really intense workouts, your body will get fat locally from the muscle tissue, right? Because it can't get the fat that's stuck in your belly, your butt, or your thighs. But after the workout's over, it then goes and grabs those fat stores to replenish what was in your muscle. And that may have a favorable effect on stubborn fat. This workout in regards to cellulite, right? Cellulite's a tricky and controversial subject, right? And there's 4 things that I like to say go into fighting cellulite. It's really what I call the 4 F's, right? So first you have to burn the fat. Then you have to strengthen the fibers, the collagen fibers, right? Then you have to increase blood flow to the area, and finally you have to firm the muscle. Most programs don't do all of this because they're not getting that hormonal soup that we're talking about. But this style of training actually taps into all 4 of these areas. It's effective at burning fat. It releases things like growth hormone and things like that, which can tighten the collagen fibers. It increases blood flow to the area, and it also is great at firming the underlying muscle layer. So a lot of people ask about targeting specific areas of the body, what we call spot reduction. And here's the interesting thing about that. Spot reduction is not possible just in terms of if I want to burn fat from my legs, that I can work my legs and burn fat from that area. That's not what happens because the body takes fat from everywhere. However, when you take something like this program and combine the right diet with it, remember I talked about these alpha and these beta receptors? With diet and exercise combinations, you can turn down some of the alpha receptors and turn up some of the beta receptors, which would mean a woman who has stubborn hip, butt, and thigh fat, she's going to speed up the release of fat from that area to match the rest of her body. We probably all know someone. I have a lot of clients who do things like marathon training and they think that they're going to get rid of their hip, butt, and thighs by doing that. But what typically happens is they lose more from their bust and their waist and their arms, and their pear shape becomes a more accentuated pear shape, even though it may have shrunk a little bit because they're losing fat more slowly from the hip, butt, and thighs and the rest of the area, right? But if you take a diet approach and put a workout like this on top of it, all of a sudden now you can speed fat loss from that area to match the rest of the body. And that becomes really important for women who want to get rid of stubborn lower body fat in particular. Metabolic Aftershock is perfect for beginners and the people who are less fit. And the reason that it is because it is self-limiting exercise. You might say, what do you mean by self-limiting? What I mean by that is that each individual learns to control the intensity of the workout and adapt the movements to their own abilities. And so if you're someone who's not that strong, you're going to immediately find your limitations within this workout and you'll be forced to work within them. That's what's beautiful about this response. In terms of the older population getting more of a benefit, I wouldn't say that they get more of a benefit than someone younger. Actually, we know from research that younger people will get a higher response in terms of the hormonal effect, just because a younger metabolism will do that. But what is great about an older individual going through a workout like this is that they still can get the release of human growth hormone. They still can achieve some release of testosterone. And unless they have a high enough intensity, that will not happen. And what's happening with many older individuals is they're being treated with kid gloves in the exercise world. And so the intensity is kept so low that they never can benefit from this hormonal push. The reason why it's kept low is because of the safety concerns. But when you adopt a rest-based training style, the safety is taken care of because the exercise becomes self-limited, which means these older adults can actually now benefit from higher intensity activity and get the hormone release that we're talking about. I mean, the physical issue should not slow you down in this type of workout because what you'll do is you'll just modify to the range of motion so that you're not in pain. So for instance, if you have bad knees and you know if you go into a deep squat, that's going to cause knee pain, what we do with rest-based training is we give you autonomy to alter that range of motion so that you're out of pain. And what that does is, rather than doing nothing, it slowly gets you stronger so that eventually you may actually be able to do the full range of motion. See, that's one of the mistakes that a lot of people make with exercise. They say, oh, I have a bad knee, so I can't do anything. When in reality, they certainly can do something, and they should be able to work within their own limits. The two biggest mistakes that people make in exercise, number one is really emphasizing quantity over quality. Okay, that's the first big one. The second one is using one size fits all approaches. It really is different. Everyone's got a different fitness level, a different physiology, a different psychology, right? Different personal preferences. That is really what's going on in the exercise world right now. We need to emphasize quality of work rather than quantity of work, and we need to find ways to get people's individual metabolism, their individual fitness level, their individual joint strength and things like that into the mix so that we can adapt and individualize the program for these individuals. You know, it's interesting, when I was training personal trainers, we used to send them out into the gyms, and one of the tasks I used to give these personal trainers, I say, you know, what I want you to do is look how long people are training, and then I want you to measure, based on how long they're training, how intense their exercise was, right? And what they would do is they'd come back and be like, well, these people were in the gym for an hour or even 30 minutes, and they were spending 95% of their time in a training place that was not that effective, that was not actually creating an intensity that would help them adapt. Well, in this workout, we have 15 minutes and you're spending almost 90% of the time in that effective zone, whereas other types of training really are spending most of their time in an ineffective area for physiological adaptation. There's three critical phases that occur after you work out. It's really, when you do an intense workout, the first thing that's going to happen is your body has to recover from the exercise. This is when you're sort of breathing hard, you're sweating, your body's cooling down. That uses energy. In exercise science, they call that EPOC. And it can last for a pretty long time and burn a significant amount of calories and fat, but that's not all there is to it. It's not just about recovery. It's also about the fact that your body then has to repair the damage done during the workout. That can last even more hours, even up into days. And then if you really give your body a strong stimulus, the body will have to adapt to get stronger, and that burns calories as well. So all of those things, recovery, repair, and adaptation, burn a huge amount of calories. And here's what's important about this. What we now know is that most of those calories are going to come from fat calories in that post-workout period. One of the reasons this workout is so powerful is because it burns mostly fat after the workout. What most people don't know is the fuel that you burn most while you're doing the workout is actually the fuel that you will replace after the workout. So let me explain that a little bit. Essentially what that means is when you do high intensity activity, you're actually burning mostly sugar during the workout. And that confuses people a little bit, but what that means is that once you stop burning up all that sugar that you've used from your liver stores and your muscle stores, and you stop the workout and go home, your body wants to replace those stores of nutrients. And so what it will do is it will take from amino acids, and it will take from your fat, glycerol from fat, combine those two to make its own sugar, and that burns a ton of energy. That's why it can be so powerful. So you may have burned more sugar during the workout, but you actually burn way more fat after the workout. And I often say to my clients, I'm like, when would you rather burn fat? Would you rather burn fat for the 30 minutes or hour while you're working out, or would you rather burn fat for hours while you're sitting at home on the couch? And that's really the difference between these two styles of exercise. Well, one of the reasons we don't use weights is because they're really tough, first of all, to manage. Oftentimes, in order to cause adaptation, right, or individualize it, you have to have all kinds of different sets of weights. So somebody would have to have, potentially weights that go from 10 pounds all the way up to 80 pounds, right? So all this stuff sort of means you're moving back and forth getting these weights. When you use just body weight, you learn to control the squeezing, the holds. You learn to push your body weight around. You get the B's and the H's, the breathless, burning, heavy, and heat because of that, without having to run back and forth to grab weights. It also is self-limiting, right? I mean, if you're not that strong, you can only squeeze so tight here, right? But if I give you an 80-pound dumbbell and you can't lift it, that's potential for injury. And so that's one of the reasons that we do that as well. So this workout can be done anywhere. Because it really requires no weight, right? You can do this in your living room, you can do this in a hotel room, you can do this anywhere. You can take your iPad to the park and do this style of workout because all that is required is your body. That's one of the beautiful things about it. It's infinitely adaptable. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. A lot of women get afraid of testosterone because they think, oh, well, that's a big, hormone that men have and it makes them bulky and I don't want to look bulky. Testosterone for women, though, is really interesting because women have a different relationship to testosterone because they have a little bit more of a response of human growth hormone when they work out. And when that combines with testosterone, you get more of a fat burning effect and less of a muscle building effect. Instead, you get a muscle shaping effect. So you get some of it, but not so much that you're going to get big and bulky like a man. And so actually the combination of human growth hormone and testosterone is actually key for women because it tightens and tones and shapes and most importantly burns fat. Really the two together, human growth hormone is powerful alone, but when you put testosterone with it, they're synergistic in their ability to burn fat and make you lean and tight. There's two extra benefits for women related to testosterone. One is bone health. A lot of women worry about their bones and their bone density, and testosterone is needed and required to make sure the bone can remodel itself and become stronger. The other thing is libido. Libido is a big issue. As women age and men age, testosterone levels will drop and libido drops with it. This workout is going to raise testosterone. It's going to have an enhancing effect on libido. In terms of exercise and diet, everyone wants to know about that. What are the dietary sort of requirements? Here's the thing that I think in my clinical practice over the years I've discovered. What people like to do is they like to think in terms of black and white, right? So they either say, oh, you should cut all carbohydrates or you should cut all fats. And the truth is, again, just like we want to individualize exercise, we want to individualize diet. And so I call it the Goldilocks effect, right? When it comes to carbohydrates, for instance, you don't want too much, you don't want too little, you want it just right. And so what we help people do is find what I call the carbohydrate tipping point. The amount of carbohydrates that you can eat in your diet that keeps your energy high, that keeps you from having hunger all the time, that suppresses cravings, allows you to push through your workouts at an intense level and burn fat and no more, right? A little too much, you won't get that effect. Too little, you'll lose muscle and have cravings. And so you really want to find the right balance there. So one trick that I can give you is that if you have most of your carbohydrates in the post-workout period, within 1 to 2 hours after you do a workout like this, that is going to help you shape your muscle. That's going to help you burn fat. It's going to help you recover better from your workouts versus just freeloading carbs all the time. The reason I talk about carbohydrates is because that's what everyone wants to know. How many carbohydrates should I eat? Well, you should eat enough carbohydrates that keep you from being hungry, keep your energy high, keep your cravings low. And that's going to be some detective work that goes on there with each individual.